Hello everyone and welcome to this gameplay tutorial video for EOS Tower Defense. In this video we're going to go through the enemy study phase and what it takes to successfully sort of analyze the enemies that are coming up during that round and come up with a strategy that's going to basically help you to fulfill the objective of the game, which is to destroy each of these enemies in the shortest distance traveled possible. Before we talk about any specific strategies to deal with those enemies, though, we're going to look at just what makes an enemy stronger or weaker in general so that you can have a better idea of what you need to do. And for that, let's look at this documentation where it says the enemy is composed of three elements, and the highest value is its most defensive element, while the lowest value is its weakest. And then the middle value establishes how balanced that composition is and affects the overall defensive strength. So to look at an example of that, let's take this first large red tank here, and its highest value is red, and that means red is its primary defensive value for the element, and these are listed as this one denotes. Elements are on the left and purity values are on the right. So right now we're just talking about these elements here on the left. The middle value is 37 for green, and then the low value would be 26 for blue. All right, and as the next section here says, in addition to these base elements, each element has a purity rating. The higher the total sum of all the purity for a given enemy, then the better the defenses will be. So for example, for this enemy, the total sum of all of these purity values isn't that high. The maximum we can have would be 85 on all of these values. So for these three, it's relatively low, and the purity isn't really doing much to strengthen this enemy. All right, and then we move on here and it says the maximum defense for an enemy is achieved with a perfectly balanced set of elements. The balance here refers mainly to that, or primarily only to that middle value. And then it says with maximum separation. The separation refers to how far away the low is from the mid and the high is from the mid. Okay, and then max valued purity. Again, 85, 85, 85, like in this example. And then the weakest of defenses occurs when the balance is as far from the center as possible. So this middle value, since it has to be the middle, it can't be 5, it has to be 6 as the lowest it can go. And then the lowest separation, so minimum or maximum, sorry, minimum separation with the least balance. So the least balanced part gets it to 6. The minimum separation is just 1, right? So 7 and then 5 would be just 1 away from the middle. The thing about this is that it can also occur on the opposite end. So as this states here, 85, 84, and 83 would be equally ineffective because again, you're as far away from this 45 as you can possibly be, and then you have the least amount of separation with just 1 away from each of those. So again, the strongest enemies are going to have the biggest separation with a perfectly centered value, and the weakest ones are going to have almost no separation with a really far off center value for the mid. All right, given those constraints or given those parameters, now we want to look at these enemies and figure out which ones should we attack and or how should we go about attacking them. And just know that you want to attack their weakest value, right? So in this case, we would go at these guys here or this one here with a high blue value and a low red value because red is its strongest defense, blue is its weakest defense. So we would go at it with the strongest value being blue, the weakest value being red to do the most damage to it. And if we look at these and just analyze them, if this pops up during a round and we're looking to try to just annihilate these things like we're going to want to do, then we're looking for any sort of patterns. And in this case, we have two of these enemies that have the same types of values. Basically, they have low blue, medium green, and high red. Both this top big large tank and then this hovercopter, they both have that same pattern. And then again, the second enemy and the fourth enemy, they have the same pattern. They have the low green, medium red, high blue. Same for this one. And the reason that's significant is that that means that any tower that you configure, say, to annihilate this enemy, it's going to do equally well against this one. The same for these two. So you get some benefits there. And the other thing to know is that when you're prioritizing which one of these enemies you want to take out first or take out and do a lot of damage to, each one of these has a different speed. And since the objective is to destroy these enemies in the shortest distance possible, you're going to want to prioritize the fastest enemies. So these hovercopters are the fastest, followed by these buggies, then the smaller tanks, and finally these larger tanks are the slowest. So in this set of enemies, you're really going to want to prioritize these two. And since these two have sort of paired enemies like this, it's easy to say that prioritizing these two enemies will basically take care of 4 out of the 5 pretty well. So that's one basic strategy. And so for this, you would probably go into this thinking when you're getting to the tower config, you're going to be looking for projectiles that can take out this guy, which would be something with high blue and low red or high green and low blue. So that's basically the one basic general strategy, and we'll be going through more strategies in the upcoming videos on how to configure upgrades and utilities on the towers. Thanks a lot. Bye.